"What the hell are you doing with my son?" Brandon Cole's voice crashed through the frozen room like a gunshot. Snow-laced air burst inward from the open window, whipping the curtains into a frenzy. Maya Williams flinched not from the cold this time, but from the sound, her arm instinctively tightening around the small, limp body of 5-year-old Aiden Cole. Her breath trembled in white clouds as she knelt on the floor, her coat torn at the sleeve, a thin line of blood trailing from her forearm. Brandon didn't see the cut. He didn't see the broken latch. He didn't see the panic in her eyes. He saw only her, a black maid, holding his white son on a cold floor beside an open window. Everything inside him detonated. A few minutes earlier, Maya had burst into this same room, breathless after hearing a faint sound, something like teeth chattering while delivering fresh towels to the hallway closet. She had pushed the door open and gasped as she found Aiden curled in his bed, blue-lipped, shaking so violently the mattress thudded against the wall. The heater was dead. The window latch cracked open. The room felt like a walk-in freezer. "Baby, no, no, no," she whispered, running to him. She touched his cheek. It was like touching a stone left out in snow. "Aiden, sweetie, can you hear me?" Her voice quavered. The child couldn't answer. This wasn't cold. This was danger. Her father had taught her what hypothermia does to a child, the slow, silent way it steals breath. So she pulled the comforter off the bed, dragged him gently onto the thick rug far from the draft, and lay down behind him, curling her body around his back, pressing warmth into his tiny frame. His trembling lessened, but only slightly. Then the window swung wider, the wind slamming it hard. Maya scrambled up to close it, fighting the gales. The metal latch snapped back again, slicing across her forearm. She gritted her teeth as blood welled, but she shoved at the window until it finally clicked shut. When she turned back, Aiden whimpered. "Help, cold." "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." She grabbed him again, wrapping him in the blanket, lowering them both to the floor. She needed someone, anyone, but the intercom panel was dead, and her phone was in the laundry wing. She crawled to the hallway, pushed at the frozen shut door, and cried out, "Help, somebody, help us, please." Her voice vanished into the cavernous corridors. No one came. She returned to Aiden, pulled him into her arms once more, and prayed the warmth of her body would keep him alive long enough for someone, anyone, to find them. Then came the bang. The wind rammed the window again, hard enough to crack the inner pane. Brandon, 2 floors down reviewing documents between conversations with investors, heard it echo up the stairwell. A violent sound. A child's faint cry, a woman's shout. His heart clenched. He ran. Now he stood in the doorway, the sight hitting him like a blade. His maid, his son, open window, blood, blankets, the cold floor. Her arms around Aiden. It didn't matter what was true. Not then. Not in that panic. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Brandon roared, striding across the room. "Sir, please," he was freezing. He didn't let her finish. He grabbed her by the shoulder so hard she winced, yanking her away from the boy. Her elbow struck the baseboard with a thud. Pain flashed across her face, but she didn't pull back. "Let go of him," he bellowed. "Mr. Cole, listen to me." He couldn't breathe. Her explanation was sliced off by his fury. "You think you can take advantage of this house? Of my son? You break a window, bleed all over. What the hell were you planning?" Maya gasped at the accusation. "I wasn't, sir. Please, he was dying." "Liar!" Brandon shoved her shoulder again, not enough to send her sprawling, but enough to bruise. She hit the wall with a soft cry. One of the guards stepped forward. "Sir, maybe we should—" "Shut the door," Brandon snapped, never breaking his glare from Maya. Aiden stirred on the rug. "Daddy." That small voice cracked something inside Brandon, but not enough. Not yet. He scooped Aiden into his arms, ignoring Maya's shaking hands, reaching out instinctively to steady the blanket. "Don't touch him," he barked. Maya froze where she knelt, breath shuddering. Aiden's voice trembled. She helped me." But Brandon's mind was a storm. His pulse hammered with memories, his wife collapsing in the emergency room years ago. A doctor too slow. A system that failed. A cold too sharp. He wasn't thinking. He wasn't seeing. He was drowning. Maya, trembling, whispered, "Please, sir." I called for help. No one came. The door stuck. I didn't know what else to do. Brandon glared down at her. You expect me to believe that? She swallowed, eyes bright with pain. I don't expect anything, sir. I just did what anyone should do for a freezing child. Brandon's jaw clenched, face flushed with rage and fear. Get her out of my sight. The guards hesitated because even they heard something in Maya's voice. Something honest. Something raw. Maya stared at Aiden, not at Brandon, tears gathering but not falling. Is he warm now? She whispered. Brandon hesitated. Just long enough. Then, that's none of your concern. He turned sharply and carried Aiden out the door. Maya remained kneeling on the floor long after he left, her breath still shaking, blood dripping down her arm, the cold settling back into her bones. She looked at the window, the broken latch, the cracked glass, then at the empty rug where Aiden had been. She whispered into the quiet, I didn't hurt your son, I saved him. But no one was there to hear her. If you felt for Maya, hit the like button and comment where you're watching from. Who knows? Someone near you might be watching this too. The storm outside raged on, sleet striking the grand windows of the Cole estate with rhythmic violence. Yet inside the guest suite, the air was still. Aiden lay curled beneath two thick blankets on a leather settee in the warmer wing of the mansion, a soft hum now coming from the restored central heater above. Brandon sat beside him, his brow furrowed as he watched the boy's chest rise and fall in shallow, even breaths. The silence gnawed at him. The doctor hadn't arrived yet, though the family's private medical line had been notified immediately. Brandon had even ordered a medical helicopter on standby, just in case. He looked at Aiden's pale cheek and reached out, brushing a strand of damp blonde hair from the boy's forehead. She helped me. The words echoed in his mind like a whisper beneath thick ice. Aiden had said it, his voice barely audible, but he had said it. Brandon leaned back, hands folded beneath his chin, elbows on knees. His heartbeat was still too loud. The image of Maya's blood on her coat, her face tight with fear but not guilt, played on a loop behind his eyes. Was it fear? Or something else? He hated how he couldn't tell. Downstairs, Maya sat alone on a hard wooden bench outside the butler's office, her injured arm bandaged crudely with a strip torn from her shirt. The guards hadn't laid a hand on her after Brandon left, but neither had they offered comfort. One had handed her a clean towel for the bleeding, then stepped away. Her phone was gone, her voice was hoarse from screaming, her legs ached from the cold floor. Still, she sat straight. The hallway was dim. Shadows danced against mahogany walls lined with portraits of people who would never know her name. Maya stared ahead, jaw clenched. The fire in her chest hadn't cooled, not even after the shock of being shoved against the wall by the man she worked for. She had seen fear in his eyes. Fear made people cruel. Her father had taught her that too. Fear turns smart men stupid, he'd once said, pouring coffee into a cracked mug on a winter morning in Detroit. And stupid men dangerous. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Heavy. Precise. Brandon appeared. His coat gone. Sleeves rolled up. Face still flushed with tension. Maya didn't rise. Doctor's on the way, he said flatly. She nodded once. He didn't speak again for several long seconds. Finally, he asked, Why didn't you knock on my door? Why not call someone? I tried, she answered calmly. Your intercom was dead. The hall phone near the laundry was disconnected last week. I left my cell by the dryer, and the door to his room stuck. I had to force it open. You should have come to me directly. I couldn't leave him. His lips were blue. Brandon looked down at her arm, the makeshift bandage soaked dark. What happened? The window latch snapped. When I closed it, the wind slammed it back. He exhaled slowly. You could have gotten frostbite, or worse. I wasn't thinking about myself. Brandon's jaw flexed. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes shifting to the floor. My son hasn't been well since his mother died. I know, Maya said softly. That surprised him. Who told you? No one. I can see it in his eyes. Brandon looked away. I didn't mean to frighten you, Maya continued. I didn't break the window. I didn't sneak in. I walked through the front hallway, same as always. But the room was ice, and he was alone. I did what I had to do. You disobeyed your position. I didn't know saving a child required permission. Her tone wasn't sharp, but it wasn't soft either. Brandon stood straight, as though the weight of the moment settled fully on his back. You were holding my son when I walked in, near a broken window. Blood on your arm. What was I supposed to think? Maya finally stood, slowly, her muscles protesting. She faced him fully now. You could have asked. Brandon opened his mouth, but no words came. In the silence, a soft, rhythmic thump echoed from upstairs. Aiden, shifting in his sleep. The sound shattered what little tension still hung. Brandon turned toward the stairs. Come with me. You'll want to be there when the doctor sees him. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she followed. In Aiden's new suite, the boy lay tucked in a warmer bed, his skin returning to its natural tone. A soft patch had been placed on his cheek to monitor temperature. The fire glowed faintly in the hearth. Maya's gaze softened. Brandon stood by the foot of the bed, arms folded again. He didn't cry, Maya whispered. No, Brandon said, quietly. He never does. Oh, I lost a niece to pneumonia. My sister didn't hear her crying either. Brandon glanced at her, a flicker of something in his eyes. Pain? Recognition? I never wanted a stranger to raise him, he said. But somehow, that's what I became. Maya remained silent. I don't know how to be warm anymore, he added. Maya looked down at her hands. It's not something money can teach. Just then, the door creaked open. Dr. Harold Kim entered, a quiet man in his 60s with a briefcase in one hand and a medical pad in the other. He nodded at both of them, then moved toward Aiden. Body temp rising slowly, the doctor murmured. Looks like early-stage hypothermia. But she was right to act fast. Likely saved him. Brandon didn't respond immediately. Maya turned to leave, her job done. But Brandon spoke. Miss Williams. She stopped. I'll call your son. Tell him you're okay. Her throat tightened. She nodded once. Thank you, she said. Brandon watched her walk out the door, her steps slow but steady. He sat beside Aiden again, brushing his hand across the boy's hair. She held you, he murmured. And for the first time in a long while, Brandon wondered who, exactly, had saved whom that night. Vivienne Parks had been in the Cole household for 12 years, 12 years of managing staff, keeping order, and ensuring the estate functioned with the sterile perfection Brandon Cole demanded. She took pride in that, which was why, at 6:14 a.m., standing in the polished kitchen hallway wrapped in her cashmere robe, she nearly dropped her coffee cup when she heard Maya Williams was still on the premises. She's still here? She snapped, turning to Jorge, the kitchen steward. I was told she'd been removed after the incident. Jorge looked down at his clipboard. Mr. Cole asked her to stay. The boy is still recovering. Vivienne's eyes narrowed. Unacceptable. Upstairs, Maya stood in the corner of the guest suite, where she'd been invited ordered to wait while the doctor finished checking on Aiden. Her bandaged arm throbbed beneath her borrowed cardigan, and though her body begged for rest, her mind was on fire. She kept replaying the moment, the crack of Brandon's voice, the sting of his shove, the judgment in his eyes, but also the shift in his tone, the glimpse of something else when he saw the blood, when he said her name. She wasn't sure what to make of that. His vitals are improving, Dr. Kim said, zipping his bag shut. But let's not pretend this was a minor thing. Children go from cold to critical in minutes. Whoever made the decision to give him body heat did exactly what was needed. Brandon, seated by the bed again, glanced toward Maya. It was her. Dr. Kim nodded at her. You were trained? My father was a military medic, she said softly. I watched him treat shock in people with less than we had. The doctor looked between them, then said nothing more. He left the room quietly, nodding at Maya once in passing. Silence returned. Brandon stood and faced her, the early light casting shadows across the weary lines of his face. I can't change how I reacted, he said, voice low, but I'm trying to see it now, what you saw, what you did. I wasn't asking you to change, Maya replied. I was asking you to believe me. He looked down at his feet. I didn't. No, she said, her tone even. You didn't. There was a knock. Vivienne entered without waiting. Excuse me, she said sharply, eyes sliding to Maya like she was something tracked in from the snow. I've prepared the necessary paperwork to have Miss Williams dismissed and a formal statement drafted in case of press interest. Brandon frowned. That won't be necessary. Vivienne blinked. Sir? She saved my son's life, Vivienne. She's not being fired. Vivienne glanced at Maya, then back at Brandon. Sir, with respect, this could create an impression. She was found in the boy's room, physically holding him, bleeding, because she fought off the cold that nearly killed him. Brandon interrupted. She's a maid, Vivienne hissed. Not a nurse, not family. She crossed a line. And so did I, Brandon shouted, startling them both. I shoved a woman who was protecting my child. Is that the story you want hitting the news? Vivienne went pale. Brandon's voice lowered again. If you care about this household's image, you'll let this drop. Vivienne stared at him for a long, chilling moment. Of course, she said finally, her tone flat. She turned and left, but Maya could feel the storm in the woman's spine as she walked away. Brandon sighed and rubbed his temples. I don't have the energy for this, he muttered, but I'll deal with her later. Maya raised an eyebrow. You always let your staff talk to you like that? He let out a dry laugh. Vivienne doesn't talk. She controls. Maya sat on the edge of the guest chair slowly. You've let her. He nodded, then looked at her. Would you stay, at least for today? Aiden might sleep through the morning, but when he wakes... I'm not your employee anymore, she reminded him. No, but you're the only person he reached for. Maya considered him. She didn't trust him, not yet. But Aiden? She'd risk more than her job for him. I'll stay, she said. But not for you. Fair enough. They were interrupted again, this time by Aiden's soft voice. Is she here? He murmured, his eyes barely open. Brandon stepped aside. Maya stood, moved to the edge of the bed, and knelt down. I'm here, sweetheart. Aiden's tiny fingers found hers. The floor was cold, but you were warm. She smiled, blinking hard. I'm glad you felt that. Brandon watched, wordless. In that moment, he saw something he hadn't in a long time, not in the business meetings, not in his charity speeches, not even in the mirror. Human decency. Not for show, not for gain. Just warmth, quietly shared. Morning crept slowly across the Cole estate, washing the snowy-covered grounds in a muted gold that seemed far too gentle compared to the night before. The mansion was unusually quiet, no clinking of polished silverware from the kitchen, no brisk footsteps of maids sweeping through the halls, no orders barked by Vivienne. Even the walls felt as if they were holding their breath. Aiden slept again, more peacefully this time. Maya sat beside him in a cushioned armchair, her bandaged arm resting on a folded blanket, her eyes halfly closed from exhaustion. For the first time since she was shoved into the wall, the ache in her ribs began to settle into a steady throb. She let her head lean back, breath slow. Brandon stood at the doorway, watching. He had entered quietly so as not to startle either of them, but the moment he saw her shoulders slumped, curls falling over her cheek, her body angled protectively toward the small boy, something in his chest tightened. He wasn't used to seeing devotion that didn't demand payment. He stepped in fully. Miss Williams. Maya opened her eyes instantly, her posture straightening despite how tired she looked. Yes? Mr. Cole? You should rest. I'm fine. Asens. You're not, he said, gesturing to her arm. Let me have the doctor look at that again once he's back. She shook her head. He already said it's fine. Just a cut. Brandon studied her for a moment, the crease between his brows deepening. Why didn't you go home last night? Her eyes returned to the sleeping boy. Because he needed someone close, she paused. And because I wasn't sure if your staff would let me back in if I left. Brandon frowned, realizing she was right. Vivienne would have locked the gates behind her. He cleared his throat. You have my permission to stay as long as Aiden needs you. That's not what I worry about, Maya said softly. He knew what she meant. Not permission, safety, understanding, fairness. He took a breath. You have that too, from me. Maya turned her head toward him, her expression unreadable. We'll see. Just then, Aiden stirred. His fingers twitched, brushing against Maya's sleeve. She leaned over quickly. Hey, sweetheart, she whispered. I'm right here. The boy opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the morning light. He looked at Maya first, then at his father. Daddy, he whispered. Brandon stepped forward immediately. Hey, buddy, how do you feel? Aiden's brow furrowed, cold, but warmer. Maya adjusted the blanket around him, careful and gentle. You scared us last night. The room was freezing. Aiden murmured. It hurt. My chest hurt. I couldn't shout. Brandon swallowed hard, guilt flooding his face. You're safe now, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're safe. Aiden nodded weakly, then turned to Maya again. You stayed? I wasn't going anywhere, she said. Not until you were warm again. Aiden reached out, and Maya placed her fingers into his small hand. He held on tightly, eyes drifting shut once more. Brandon watched the connection between them, easy, instinctive, unforced. He had spent years trying to build something like that with his son, but grief had made him stiff, distant. Responsibilities had made him absent. He could provide warmth for an entire city but somehow failed to give enough to his own child. You should eat, he said abruptly, turning to Maya. There's breakfast in the kitchen. Maya shook her head. I'm fine here. I didn't ask if you were fine, Brandon said quietly. I'd like you to eat. She hesitated, unsure if it was a command or a request. The tiredness in her body made the decision for her. All right, she said, but only if the nurse stays with him. There's no nurse, he replied. Just me. Maya blinked. You'll stay? I will. She searched his eyes for any sign of guilt or performance. What she found instead was something unexpected. Honesty. She rose carefully, holding her side for a moment. Brandon moved instinctively as if to help but stopped himself, knowing she wouldn't want it. Maya walked toward the door. Before she stepped out, she paused. If he wakes up, just tell him I'm getting tea. Brandon nodded. I will. Down the corridor, the hum of the heater warmed the air. Maya moved slowly, her body aching, her mind replaying everything again, the cold, the wind, the slam of the window, her scream for help. She reached the kitchen and leaned against the counter for a long moment before anyone noticed she was there. Jorge, the steward, turned from the stove, eyes widening. Miss Williams, are you all right? Maya attempted a smile. I've been better. Sit, he said immediately, pulling out a chair. You look exhausted. She sank down gratefully. He set a cup of hot tea in front of her, the steam curling upward like a gentle embrace. Thank you, she murmured. You saved that boy, Jorge said. Everyone downstairs has been talking about it. Not everyone sees it that way, Maya replied. People who matter will. She wasn't sure that was true. After a few minutes, footsteps approached, heavy, sharp. Maya didn't need to look up to know who it was. Vivienne Parks. Well, the woman said, crossing her arms. Here you are. Maya exhaled softly and lifted her eyes. Vivienne tilted her head. I have to say, your resilience is impressive. Most staff members would have left in shame after last night. I didn't do anything shameful, Maya said calmly. Vivienne leaned in slightly. In households like this, perception matters more than truth. You'd be smart to remember that. Maya held her gaze. Truth kept that boy alive. A brief flicker crossed Vivienne's face, annoyance, perhaps even fear, but she disguised it quickly. Regardless, Vivienne said, straightening her robe, Mr. Cole understands the importance of order. You won't be staying long. Maya's smile was small. We'll see. Vivienne bristled, but before she could respond, Brandon's voice echoed from the hallway. Vivienne. The woman stiffened. Brandon approached, eyes cutting to Maya first, ensuring she was all right, then locking onto Vivienne with a chilling steadiness. Unless you have breakfast for her, he said. You can leave. Vivienne swallowed. Of course, sir. When she disappeared, Brandon turned back to Maya. He's asleep again. He asked for you twice. Maya's chest tightened. I'll come. Finish your tea, he said. I promised him. She studied him carefully. I didn't expect you to keep that promise. He met her gaze. Then I guess I have a lot more to prove. For the first time since the cold floor of Aiden's room, Maya allowed herself to breathe just a little deeper, a little easier, because despite the storm outside and the storm inside this mansion, something was shifting, not falling apart, not breaking, just shifting. The library of the Cole estate had once been a place of warmth. Years ago, Brandon's late wife, Eleanor, had filled its high shelves with first editions and lined the walls with soft amber lighting. A stone fireplace with intricate ivy carvings stood at its heart, and even now, years after her death, it still carried her scent, lavender, old pages, and cinnamon. That morning, Brandon sat in the leather chair closest to the hearth, a file spread open in his lap. The flames crackled, but he barely felt the heat. He was reviewing the staff logs from the night before Vivienne's notes, security timestamps, and absence records. Everything about the household ran like a machine. But as he combed through the logs, Brandon saw it clear as day. No one had checked Aiden's room for over 6 hours. No security patrol, no night nurse, not even a brief knock from housekeeping. And worst of all, the head nanny, Miss Layton, had left the premises at 9:04 p.m. with a handwritten note about personal obligations. No one had filled her absence. It was as if his son had been forgotten. Brandon gritted his teeth. He was still holding the file when Maya entered the library. She paused at the threshold, hesitating. This was a room she'd never been invited into before. "Come in," he said without looking up. She stepped carefully over the polished wooden floors, noting the fireplace, the thick books with gold spines, and the long mahogany table in the center. It smelled like wood smoke and old money. "You asked for me?" she said softly. Brandon nodded and gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Maya did, folding her hands in her lap, her eyes watching him cautiously. She still wasn't sure what version of Brandon she'd get from moment to moment, the cold CEO, the grieving father, or the man who apologized without saying the word. "I looked at the logs," he began, his voice low. "You were the only staff member who entered the second-floor hallway between 9 and midnight. I wasn't planning to," she said. "But I heard him." Brandon looked up. "You said that before. I wasn't sure if you believed me." "I didn't." And now?" He closed the file, setting it aside. "Now I'm wondering how many other times I haven't believed the right person." They sat in silence. The fire popped softly. "I owe you something," Brandon said finally. "Not just thanks." "I'm not here for repayment," Maya replied. "Aiden's a child. He didn't choose this house or the way people treat each other in it." Brandon's jaw flexed. "You think I've mistreated you?" "I think you mistook me," she said carefully. Brandon gave a dry laugh. "That's generous." Maya looked at him. "The problem isn't just what happened last night. It's how easily you assumed the worst of me. Even when your son reached for me." Brandon didn't answer at first. His gaze drifted to the fire. "I've been lied to by people I trusted. Business partners. Old friends. Even Eleanor's brother he stole from Aiden's trust fund while I was flying overseas. I stopped assuming the best a long time ago." "I'm not them," Maya said. "I didn't take anything from you. I gave." He met her eyes. "I know." There was a beat of quiet before Maya stood. "I should go check on Aiden." Brandon nodded, then stood as well. "Wait." She paused. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. "I had HR process your pay plus a bonus. 3 months worth. I figured after what happened, you might not want to come back." Maya looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "So I'm dismissed." "No," he said, "but I thought you deserved the choice." Maya's shoulders lowered slightly. "I'll stay. For Aiden." Brandon raised an eyebrow. "Just for him?" Her eyes didn't waver. "Right now, that's enough." She left the envelope untouched. After she exited, Brandon stood in the quiet for a long while, staring into the fire. The crackle of wood reminded him of cold nights long ago, before money solved everything. Back when Eleanor used to warm Aiden's socks in front of the fire so he wouldn't cry in his crib. He closed his eyes. Downstairs, Maya stopped by the staircase where Jorge was wiping a silver vase. He glanced at her, then at her arm. "You look steadier," he said. "I had tea. Good medicine." Maya smiled faintly. "Where's the boy?" "Still asleep," Jorge said. Then he leaned in. "Word is, the nanny's not coming back." Maya blinked. "She quit?" Vivienne asked her to resign, said it was inappropriate optics for a child to prefer the maid. Maya's stomach turned. "That's what they're worried about? Optics?" "You saved his life," Jorge said, "and that makes some people uncomfortable." Maya knew what he meant. Her skin, her position, her refusal to bow her head. She exhaled. "They'll find someone else." "Maybe," Jorge said, "but the boy won't want her." "Now." Maya nodded slowly, heart heavy. Later that afternoon, Aiden woke again, this time reaching not for his father, but for Maya. And when she entered the room, He gave her a sleepy smile and whispered, "Can you read the whale book?" She sat beside him, pulled the dog-eared book from the nightstand, and began to read in a calm, gentle rhythm. Brandon stood outside the doorway, listening, and for the first time since Eleanor's death, he didn't feel like he was losing something. He felt like he might be getting something back. The next morning dawned quieter than expected. Snow still blanketed the estate, but the storm had passed, leaving a clean, crisp stillness in its wake. Inside the Cole mansion, however, the tension lingered just beneath the surface like thin ice stretched across a deep lake. Brandon stood in his office, staring out the tall window at the empty driveway, hands in his pockets. His phone buzzed on the desk behind him. He let it ring. The events of the last 48 hours had shaken him not just because of Aiden's close call, but because of what it revealed. His house was filled with polished surfaces and professional smiles, but few people actually cared. Except Maya. He still struggled to explain the heat that rose in his chest every time he thought of her curled on that freezing floor with Aiden. She hadn't hesitated. She hadn't flinched. She had done more in 10 minutes than his entire staff had in months. Brandon finally turned from the window and picked up the phone. "Cole," he answered curtly. A voice greeted him, a familiar one. "Mr. Cole, this is Detective Miles Branner. Following up on the inquiry you filed back in October about the missing funds from the charitable wing of your foundation. You mentioned a possible internal suspect." Brandon sat down, posture sharpening. "Yes, I did." "Well," Branner continued, "we've been digging through some digital records. One of your staff members accessed the foundation's secure files after hours 3 times over the last month." Brandon narrowed his eyes. "Who?" A pause. The logins traced back to Vivienne Parks. Brandon's silence was thunderous. "You're sure?" he said finally. "IP match, timestamps, ID badges. We're still reviewing whether data was actually stolen or just viewed, but she shouldn't have had that access." Brandon's fingers tapped once on the desk. "Thank you, Detective. Keep me informed." He hung up and sat back, staring at the leather grain on his desk. Vivienne, the woman who had managed his house for more than a decade. The same woman who had tried twice to push Maya out the door without even listening to what had happened. His jaw tightened. Downstairs, Maya sat with Aiden in the sunroom, a book open on her lap as the boy traced letters with his fingers on the glass table. The warmth of the morning sun filtered through, softening his hair into a gold halo. "I can spell whale now," Aiden said proudly. "Let me see," Maya encouraged. He drew the letters, WHALE. "Well done," she smiled. "You're getting fast." Aiden grint. "Can we draw next?" "Only if you help me clean the crayons after." "I promise." Maya ruffled his hair gently. The little boy leaned against her, content. But the peaceful moment didn't last. Vivienne stepped into the room like a sudden chill, her heels sharp against the marble floor. She held a clipboard and wore her usual tight-lipped expression. "Miss Williams," she said. Maya looked up slowly. "Good morning. Mr. Cole has requested a staff meeting in the library at 10. Mandatory attendance." Maya nodded. "I'll be there." Vivienne glanced at Aiden, then back at Maya. "You may leave the child with Jorge, or another aide." "I'd rather not," Maya said gently. "He gets nervous when I disappear." Vivienne's voice dropped slightly. "You're a maid, Miss Williams. Not a nanny. Don't confuse the two." Aiden's grip tightened on Maya's hand. "I know my title," Maya replied coolly. "But right now, I'm what he trusts." Vivienne's eyes glinted. "We'll see how long that lasts." She turned on her heel and left. Aiden looked up. "Why is she always mad?" Maya smoothed his hair. "Some people don't like when things change." "She doesn't like me?" "Oh, honey," Maya said with a soft chuckle. "I think she's just afraid." "Doe, of what?" "That you might grow up seeing people for who they are, not just what they look like." Aiden considered that. Then, "I like who you are." Maya swallowed past the lump in her throat. In the library an hour later, Brandon stood at the fireplace, the logs crackling behind him, his face impassive. All house staff had gathered 8 people in total. Jorge stood near the back. Maya stood quietly near the doorway, trying to disappear into the bookshelves. Vivienne stood at the front, clipboard in hand, unreadable. Brandon cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming. I won't waste your time." He looked around the room slowly. There was a breakdown in this house, a serious one. My son could have died. Everyone stilled. Brandon continued, and when that happened, only one person responded. One. He turned to Maya, eyes steady. Maya Williams saved Aiden's life. While others were elsewhere or absent, she acted. No questions, no delay, no hesitation. Several of the staff shifted awkwardly. Vivian's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Brandon turned to her. "Miss Parks, could you please hand in your keys?" Vivian's jaw slackened. "Excuse me? I've already spoken with security. Your access has been revoked. You're being relieved of your duties, effective immediately." "You're firing me?" "No. You're under investigation for unauthorized access to my foundation's files. You'll be hearing from the board and the authorities." A gasp rippled through the staff. Vivian's clipboard trembled. "You trust her over me?" Brandon didn't raise his voice. "I trust what happened. And what happened is this. Maya did her job. You did not." Vivian's mask cracked. Her voice turned sharp. "She doesn't belong here, Brandon. She's—" "Enough," Brandon cut in, voice like steel. He stepped forward. "Say it. Go ahead. Say what you mean." Vivian's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Brandon gestured to the door. "You can leave now." Vivian turned and left with rigid steps, her pride louder than any insult she could have spoken. As the door closed behind her, Brandon turned to Maya. "Miss Williams," he said, "I'd like to offer you a formal position." The staff turned, stunned. Brandon continued. "Full-time caregiver for Aiden. Title, benefits, and whatever resources you need to continue supporting him the way you have." Maya looked around the room, her heart pounding. "I'll accept," she said, "but on one condition." Brandon tilted his head. "Name it." "I don't want to be invisible anymore. Not to you. Not to this house." Brandon nodded slowly. "You won't be." And as the staff dispersed, Maya stood alone by the fire, feeling for the first time in years seen. The spare bedroom next to Aiden's had been empty for years. It had once served as a reading room for Eleanor, filled with sunlight and soft rugs, but after her passing, Brandon had it locked. No one entered. No one spoke of it. Her books had remained untouched, her perfume lingering like the ghost of a better time. Until now, Brandon stood in the doorway, watching as a crew quietly removed old boxes and vacuumed thick dust from the corners. He had opened the room that morning, handed the key to Jorge, and given one simple instruction: make it livable. He had only thought about it for a few minutes before deciding. Maya deserved a space close to Aiden. She'd earned it not just through her actions, but through her calm presence, her unwavering attention, her ability to comfort his son in a way even Brandon himself had failed to do. And truth be told, he wanted her nearby. "Sir," Jorge said, stepping up behind him, "would you like us to change the curtains?" Brandon nodded. "She likes light. Give her something soft, blue maybe." Jorge smiled faintly, already had a feeling. Meanwhile, Maya sat with Aiden in the family room, both of them curled on a sofa, as a cartoon murmured softly in the background. Aiden rested his head against her arm, thumb tucked under his chin. His eyelids were heavy, but he refused to sleep. He had done that twice already today, always jolting awake as if afraid she wouldn't be there when he opened his eyes. "You know I'm not going anywhere, right?" she whispered. Aiden nodded sleepily. "You have warm hands." Maya smiled. "You remember that from the other night? You held me. I heard your heartbeat." She swallowed hard. "I'm glad you did." Aiden looked up at her. "Do you miss your family?" The question caught her off guard. She'd never talked about her own life here. The Cole estate had a way of swallowing the personal out of people. "My mom passed when I was your age," she said softly. "And my dad, well, he was a good man. A tough one. He used to say love wasn't always loud, but you could feel it when it mattered." Aiden listened without blinking. "He used to fix up bikes for the neighborhood kids," Maya continued. "Even ones who stole from his porch. He didn't care. He said some people just needed a reason to believe the world was good." "No. Was it?" Aiden asked. Maya hesitated. "Sometimes." They sat in silence for a while, the cartoon still playing, though neither was watching. Brandon appeared in the doorway and waited until Maya met his eyes. He motioned for her to follow. She kissed Aiden's forehead and whispered, "Be right back." When she reached the hallway, Brandon gestured down toward the second floor. "Come with me." They walked side by side. For once, the space between them didn't feel like a canyon. He stopped in front of the old reading room. The door was cracked open. "I'd like you to have this," he said. "It's close to Aiden. It's yours now." Maya stepped inside slowly. The windows faced the east garden. A new bed had already been assembled. A soft armchair placed in the corner. The old rug was gone, replaced by a deep blue one that reminded her of twilight skies. There was even a small desk near the wall, simple but clean. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I figured you'd be more comfortable here than down in the staff quarters." She turned toward him. "Why now?" Brandon hesitated. "Because you're not just staff anymore. Not to Aiden, not to this house, and, if I'm being honest, not to me." Maya met his gaze, unsure what to say. It wasn't a declaration. Not exactly. But there was something tentative in his voice. Human. Bare. She softened. "I'll take good care of it." "I know you will." "No." Before she could respond, there was a knock from down the hall. It was Jorge again, holding a package. "This just arrived from the foundation, sir. Marked urgent." Brandon took it and frowned. "Excuse me," he said to Maya. "I'll let you settle in." He left quickly, descending to his office, package in hand. Inside, he sliced the envelope open and pulled out a small flash drive. Attached was a printed note. "Mr. Cole, I think you should see this before you finalize your staff decisions. Someone isn't who they claim to be. No name, no sender." Brandon's face tightened. He inserted the drive into his encrypted laptop and opened the folder. Inside was a single audio file, labeled Guest Room, Feb 1st, 3:12 a.m. He hit play. The recording began with static, then sharpened into two voices, Vivienne's and a man's. "She's in over her head," Vivienne said. "She's dangerous. The boy's gotten attached. We can't have that." "What do you want me to do?" There was a pause. Then Vivienne said coldly, "Make her disappear, quietly." The file ended. Brandon sat back, eyes wide. Maya had been right all along, not just about Aiden, but about something deeper, something sinister. He had nearly fired her, nearly destroyed her future, based on words from someone willing to orchestrate her removal. He stared at the screen. Then, slowly, he reached for his phone. "Maya," he said when she answered, "I need to see you. Now." Maya walked briskly down the second-floor corridor, her footsteps muffled by the Persian runner. She had barely started placing her clothes in the new dresser when Brandon's voice came through the phone, quiet, clipped, urgent. "Come to my office. Now." Now she was here, hand hovering at the door he'd left ajar. She pushed it open slowly. Brandon stood behind his desk, arms folded tightly over his chest. His laptop screen glowed dimly behind him. The flash drive still plugged in. He didn't look up right away. "Close the door," he said quietly. Maya stepped in and shut it, unease curling in her stomach. "What's going on?" He gestured to the leather armchair across from him. "Sit." She did, her eyes never leaving his. Brandon took a long breath, as if weighing the world before lifting it. "Someone sent me a file," he began. "A recording." Maya's eyebrows pinched. "Of what?" "Vivienne, and someone I haven't identified yet. Planning something." He tapped a key on his laptop, and the room filled with the grainy but unmistakable recording she'd heard once before. Vivienne's voice, calculating and cold, discussing her removal as if it were a stain to be scrubbed away. "She's in over her head. The boy's gotten attached. Make her disappear." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya sat frozen, the words echoing in her ears, her fingers clenched in her lap, but she refused to flinch. Brandon finally looked at her. "I'm sorry," he said. "You were right about her, and I didn't want to see it." Maya exhaled slowly, her pulse catching up to the moment. "She's gone now, isn't she?" "She left this house," Brandon said. "But if she's working with someone else, I can't risk her still watching from the shadows." "Why would she do it?" Maya asked, the question more to herself than him. Brandon's jaw tightened. Power. Control. She'd been manipulating this house for years, quietly. No one questioned her. And I let her run things while I disappeared into grief and business flights. She saw Aiden attached to someone who didn't answer to her. Maya said quietly. That scared her. Brandon looked down. It scared me too. The admission hung between them like a fragile truth. He moved around the desk and sat in the chair beside her, no longer speaking from across the divide. Not as the employer. Not as the billionaire. Just a father, a man with mistakes to his name and pain still in his chest. She didn't care about him, Maya said. Not really. She followed rules. Controlled optics. But Aiden isn't a press release. He's a little boy. I know that now, Brandon said, because you showed me. They sat in silence again, the kind that comes after fire, not the destruction, but the moment you realize something still stands. Brandon reached into a drawer and pulled out the flash drive. He turned it in his fingers. I'm handing this over to the authorities. Detective Branner will follow the trail. I don't want Vivienne to vanish behind another lie. Maya nodded. Do you think she'll come back? No, he said. She won't risk facing me again, but she might try something indirect. She knows I'm not going anywhere, Maya said firmly. She knows Aiden chose me. Brandon studied hair. You keep saying it's for him, he said. And I believe you. But I also want to ask just once, are you staying for anyone else? Maya met his eyes and didn't answer right away. Then, ask me that again when your house isn't on fire. He gave a quiet laugh. A knock came at the door. It was Jorge, holding a silver tray. Tea for two, he said, eyebrows raised knowingly. Brandon accepted it and nodded. Thank you. Once they were alone again, Maya lifted her cup and took a slow sip. She didn't realize how badly she needed something warm until that moment. I've been thinking, Brandon said. Aiden needs more than just structure. He needs joy, familiarity, a home that doesn't feel like a museum. He needs time, Maya replied, and patience. Brandon looked at her, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Think you could help with that? She leaned back slightly. Are you offering me a promotion already? I'm offering you a partnership. Not in business. In raising him. Maya blinked. That's a lot. It doesn't have to mean anything beyond what it is right now, he said. I'm not asking for something romantic. Not today. I'm asking you to stay involved. As someone Aiden trusts. As someone I trust. Maya studied him, heart thudding in her chest. You said you didn't believe people easily anymore. I'm working on that. They both sipped their tea. Then Maya said, there's something you should know. About that night, in Aiden's room. Brandon nodded. Go on. I didn't just find him cold. I think he was hiding. On purpose. Brandon's face darkened. From who? I don't know. But he was behind the curtain, not his bed. And when I asked what happened, he said, she yelled again. Brandon froze. Vivienne? He asked. I can't say for sure, Maya replied. But I don't think it was the first time. Brandon stood abruptly, moving to the window, fingers digging into the sill. How could I have missed that? Because you were trying to survive too. He looked back at her. Not an excuse. No, Maya said, but it's a reason to do better. A knock interrupted them once again. This time it was a smaller hand, tapping timidly. Daddy? Came Aiden's voice. Brandon moved quickly and opened the door. Aiden stood there in pajama pants and a dinosaur hoodie, holding his stuffed whale. I had a bad dream, he whispered. Brandon Klelt. Want to come in here? Aiden looked past his father, saw Maya, and his whole face changed. Can I sit with her? Brandon stepped aside. Maya opened her arms and the little boy rushed into her lap. He settled in instantly, clutching his whale and leaning against her chest. I dreamed the lady came back, he mumbled. She had keys. Maya ran a hand down his back. She can't come in anymore. Daddy made sure of that. You did too, Aiden whispered. Brandon watched them, something fragile moving across his face. A mix of awe and regret, and something dangerously close to hope. He sat on the armrest beside them. As the fire crackled in the office, the three of them sat in an unexpected tableau. Billionaire. Caregiver. Child. Not bound by blood or contract, but by something more profound. Shared truth. The next morning brought a rare warmth, the kind of sunshine that filtered through tall windows like honey and made old wood floors glow. Maya stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to her elbows, helping Jorge prepare Aiden's breakfast. Aiden himself sat at the counter, drawing on a placemat with washable markers, humming softly to himself. You really don't have to cook, Jorge said with a grin as Maya flipped the pancakes. She laughed. If I waited on breakfast from this house, the kid would live on frozen waffles. Dear, I heard that, Brandon said, stepping into the room, freshly showered and dressed in a dark navy sweater and slacks. His hair still damp. He looked more like a man on a quiet weekend than a CEO. Maya glanced at him. Are you allowed in this part of the house before noon? He smirked. Don't get used to it. Aiden turned in his stool. Daddy! She let me crack the eggs. Brandon walked over, ruffled his son's hair. That's dangerous, you know. Maya lifted an eyebrow. So is trusting your staff blindly. But we all make choices. Brandon smiled faintly, accepting the shot. They sat together for breakfast, something that hadn't happened since Eleanor died. Brandon didn't even realize it until Jorge set down the last plate and quietly left, giving them space. It was simple scrambled eggs, pancakes, orange juice. But Aiden kept giggling. Maya teased gently, and for the first time in a long time, Brandon wasn't thinking about mergers, deadlines, or stock prices. He was watching his son smear syrup on his cheeks and listening to a woman hum off-key while wiping the counter. Peace, he thought, could sometimes look like this. Later that morning, as Maya walked Aiden to his room for a post-breakfast story, Brandon returned to his office. He needed to follow up with Detective Branner, see if the trace on Vivienne's phone had turned anything up. The file from the anonymous sender still sat on his desk, and every time he looked at it, something unsettled twisted in his chest. Who sent it? Why now? And how deep did this go? The phone rang before he could dial out. Mr. Cole, said Branner on the other end, we've got something you need to see. Go on. We traced the voice in the Vivienne tape, the other one. It matches a man named Harold Sutter. Used to be your wife's estate lawyer. Brandon's blood ran cold. Sutter's not on my payroll. No, but he's connected, deeply. He handled the legal restructuring after your wife's passing. He would have had access to trusts, deeds, private records. Brandon's voice turned sharp. And he's working with Vivienne? Looks that way. Our guess? They were planning to challenge control over Aiden's inheritance. Brandon gripped the desk. Jesus, they might have believed you were too distracted to notice. And if Maya had been removed from the picture, there'd be no witness to how Aiden was being treated. Brandon finished. Exactly. I'll need all the documentation, he said. And full transcripts. We'll have them couriered this afternoon. Brandon hung up, his stomach twisting. It wasn't just jealousy or racism. It wasn't about optics. Vivienne had been targeting Aiden all along, and Maya had been in the crosshairs not because she was a nuisance, but because she noticed, because she cared. Meanwhile, Maya stood at the window in Aiden's room, watching him build a Lego city on the rug. The boy had insisted she stay close. He still flinched if she stepped too far away, a remnant of fear from nights past. Is this tall enough to be a school? He asked, holding up a crooked tower of red bricks. It's taller than mine ever was, Maya said, sitting cross-legged. Did you like school? She nodded. I liked the books, not the noise. Aiden glanced at her. You're Kiat like me. Maya smiled. It's not a bad thing. Some people said it was, he murmured. Her heart clenched. Those people didn't understand you. He turned the tower slightly. You do. Before she could answer, Brandon appeared in the doorway. His face was unreadable, but Maya caught something urgent in his eyes. Can we talk? He asked. She stood and followed him into the hallway. He led her back to the library, where he shut the door gently behind them. I just got off the phone with Branner, he said. Vivienne was working with Harold Sutter. Maya blinked. Who's that? My late wife's lawyer, Brandon replied. The man who controlled the legal strings behind most of the estate and trust funds, including Aiden's. Understanding dawned. They were trying to, what, steal from him? Yes. And they needed to create a situation where I looked unstable, distracted, neglectful. His face twisted. And you? You were the threat. Because you were always watching. Maya's voice dropped. They were using Aiden. Brandon looked stricken. They were weaponizing him, turning his condition into an opportunity. Maya felt a chill ripple through her, and I was in the way. He looked at her. You still are, and I've never been more grateful. A long silence. Then Maya stepped closer, her voice steady. So what now? Brandon's expression hardened. Now we protect him, and we protect you. She tilted her head. Meaning? Meaning I'm hiring security. Real ones. No more relying on the same staff Vivienne corrupted. And I want you to start documenting everything. Your notes with Aiden, your observations, just in case they come back. Maya crossed her arms. You think they will? Brandon hesitated. I think people like Sutter don't vanish. They retreat, and then they strike again. She nodded slowly. Okay. Brandon searched her face. You're not afraid? Of them? She said. No. Then what are you afraid of? She paused. That you'll change your mind again. That someday I'll be the one escorted out because it's easier than fighting this. He shook his head. I won't, he said. Not again. Her eyes lingered on him a moment longer. Then I'll fight with you. And this time, when they stood side by side in that grand, cold house, they didn't feel like strangers occupying the same battlefield. They felt like allies. It began with small things. A car parked too long outside the gate. A delivery that no one ordered. A stranger spotted by the groundskeeper walking too close to the southern perimeter of the estate. Maya noticed them first. She didn't say anything at first, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to sound paranoid. But the third time she caught a glimpse of that same dusty gray sedan idling just outside the wrought iron entrance, she told Brandon. He didn't hesitate. Within 24 hours, private security was stationed discreetly around the property. Discreet, but not subtle men and women in plain black jackets, earpieces barely visible, stationed like chess pieces along the estate's vulnerable points. Jorge whispered, Feels like the president lives here now. Brandon didn't smile. Feels like I finally woke up. Inside, life continued, but beneath the quiet hum of domestic routine, a taut string of awareness now bound the walls. Maya kept Aiden close during the day, and at night, she double-checked the locks on his windows herself. On the third night, Brandon knocked on her new bedroom door. She opened it, still in her robe, eyes weary but calm. May I? He asked. She stepped aside. You don't need permission. Not from me. He hesitated by the bookshelf. Yes, I do. Maya sat at the edge of her bed. What is it? Brandon ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I had another meeting with Branner. They've frozen Sutter's accounts, but they're still searching for him. He's vanished. Maya frowned. He won't stay hidden forever. I know, but until then, I don't want to assume we're safe. She nodded. We're not. Brandon looked at her. You're different. Maya raised an eyebrow. How so? Calmer, he said. Or maybe more dangerous. That drew a small smile. You saw me on the floor, sir. I've never looked more harmless. He stepped forward. You've never looked stronger. Non. The air shifted. It wasn't romantic yet, but it was intimate. Two soldiers in the same war, too bruised to flirt, too bonded to pretend otherwise. Then Brandon said something that caught her off guard. I'm thinking of pulling Aiden out of public school. Maya blinked. You've already been talking about that. Yes, but I'm thinking. Permanently. Homeschooling. Tutors on property. A routine built around his needs. Not a district calendar. Maya leaned back, absorbing it. What brought this on? Brandon hesitated. He asked me last night why the teachers didn't like him. Her stomach twisted. I told him that wasn't true, Brandon continued. But he said they always talked to the aide, not to him. That he wasn't real in class. Maya's eyes brimmed. He noticed. He always notices, Brandon said quietly. She swallowed, nodded. Then yes, pull him. He met her gaze. Would you help design the plan? Of course. Nah. They stood there a moment longer, and then Brandon glanced toward the window. A red blinking light on one of the far security poles flickered a new sensor Jorge had helped install. We've turned this place into a fortress, Maya said softly. Brandon nodded. Because this family needs protecting. Maya let that word hang there. Family. He didn't take it back. The next morning, as the household moved into its new rhythm, Maya sat with Aiden at the kitchen table, helping him with a nature workbook. He liked whales and trees, and she guided his pencil gently as he filled in facts. Brandon passed through with a coffee and paused to watch them. He almost didn't notice the envelope by the front door. No postage, no return address. He opened it cautiously. Inside was a single photograph, a grainy, zoomed-in image of Maya outside in the snow, holding Aiden on her hip, his head buried in her shoulder. On the back, in thick black ink, "This is not your son." Brandon's grip on the photo tightened. The paper crinkled slightly in his hand. He didn't say a word, just turned, walked into his office, and called Branner. The detective